What's going on, everybody? Gundam the 13th here with a new look at the Alex Gundam armor. A 450 raid. Running around here. We have our main weapons, checking out the Alex Hyper Bazooka as well as the beam rifle, although I'm gonna be honest with you, because these are legitimately just the same as they are normally, I'd probably suggest doing the bazooka over the VR, especially when we look at some of the stats. But outside of that, we have the beam saber ×2 as well as the Gatling gun, which does have really good accumulation. Also nice that they let it actually pop out of the armor. And the blow melee, checking that out. This, unfortunately, as you'll see when we go into the demo, not quite what I was hoping for. And we do not get any roundhouses or anything like that. But this actually readies up a little bit faster than the sabers do. And you can see that the cooldown time after usage is a little bit different as well. But we also have the head mounted Vulcans on here. Not too bad for accumulation. You can stun in one mag, although you're pretty much using the entire mag once again to do so. So with that out of the way, let us try to check out the stats here. 450 raid, like we said before, 3 priority. No compatibility on this one. So from the top up, we have 15k health, ballistic resistance is 32, beam resistance is 30, melee resistance is 31, range strength is 5, melee strength is 35, movement speed is 125, top speed is 200, thruster gauge is 60, turning speed is 69, and part slots from top to bottom is 15, 11, and 6. Moving on to the skills here, we have Lick Shotguns over level 3, Assault Booster level 1, High Performance Balancer level 1, Melee Combo Controller level 1, High Spec Ambac level 2, High Performance Radar level 1, Damage Control level 1, Maneuver Armor level 2, Enhanced Tackle level 5, which don't let that number fool you. It does mean that you can get some good distance, but that plus 200 to attack, not super great. Definitely not going to be doing any big chunk tackles like other suits, which we will be talking about later. Anti-Blast Stabilizer level 1, Active Guard level 1, as well as the Chobam armor skill itself. If the unit suffers ranged ballistic attack reactions from cumulative damage are nullified, all other reactions are reduced, and HP damage is reduced to 50. However, damage reduction and reaction-related effects will cease when HP falls below 50%, and anti-ballistic armor is reduced to 0. So, legitimately just the ballistic version of the beam coating that you would find on something like the Delta Gundam. That in tandem with the Active Guard and the fact that, as you can see, this has no force injectors and no roll, makes this something that they really want you to wait in the battle and just get stuck in with. Unfortunately, and as you'll see in a little bit, that isn't really a great bid when ballistic is the least of this thing's problems. Let's take a quick peek over here though at the enhancement list. So we have anti-ballistic armor enhancement level 1, ADPA, so extra melee, frame reinforcement plus 100 to unit HP. Complex expansion, because this is a 3-star, tends to come really late, so it's at the very end of the regular upgrades. Anti-ballistic armor enhancement level 4, so plus 5 to ballistic resistance as if it needs it. And ADPA level 4, so even more melee if you unlock them. So, that's the general rundown. Let's take this over into practice and show you this in action before moving on to the usual stuff in terms of demos.
Ready to begin?
Alright, here we go. So for the sake of my own sanity, we're going to be using the bazooka. As you can imagine, the Alex is the same as it usually is. 3-hit stun, decent fast charge. Not a whole lot of output, as you saw with the stats there being 5 more or less. One thing to keep in mind right out of the gate as well is that this is regular combo controller, so you're only getting 2 swings with each of these. The dual swords thankfully aren't super dramatic, except for the downswing. A lot of wind up on both the downswing and the big kit in this. The accumulation on that Gatling gun, insane as usual. Good stun on this. The Vulcans, like we were saying before, you pretty much have to dump most of the mags to get a stun, but it is doable. Also, not too bad with the accumulation. In general, you're probably going to be doing downswings to downswings. You can reach a decent way with that. Technically, You could start with this first, go into this, and then go into another boot. The problem being, of course, that that boot reaches high, and if you're not hitting shoulder when they fall down, or if they're not elevated oddly like they are here, you're gonna have a lot of clearance issues doing that. So depending on which one you start with, you probably are better suited trying to start with the sword, going into these, and just doing it again like that so you can actually get all your damage. The bigger thing to keep in mind, like I was also talking about, is that the tackle on this, that's not too bad on a support. Do not try to lean on that too much when you're hitting literally anything else. Not a good idea. But it is doable. Definitely not shield tackle worthy, but still not the worst. You can also show off the active guard, although you've probably seen it on other suits before, right? One thing to keep in mind with this, especially when we're talking about baseline, is that these guys like to miss a lot. But it does actually shade off a fair amount of health loss. But as you can see, it burns through a lot, and I mean a lot of boosts to actually hold that for any extended period of time. Not to mention the initial windup for that is really long. You just hit him in the back of the head. So if you're actually trying to do a lot of melee canceling and whatnot, it's a little bit risky to try to commit to that, especially if you don't know for sure whether or not your team is going to be able to follow up or will even notice what you're doing when you're doing pubs or whatnot. So although it is a big aspect of the suit, you really have to use it sparingly, mostly as like a quick roll, right? Something to just get out of immediate danger. One thing to keep in mind though, and I don't know if we saw it just there, you cannot cancel out and do the active guard in this suit. So unlike other suits that actually let you transition really easily into active guard, you do have to land confirm in order to get it started here. So there's a little bit more of a delay than when other suits do it, which is very unfortunate. One thing I will say as well is that now that you see that we're on low health, the armor itself doesn't actually shed, which is something that I feel like is a bit of a missed opportunity visually, as well as being able to give this thing the ability to be a little bit more of a two-phase suit, right? I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not even gonna go look over at the base accumulation on this because I already know it's not gonna be that much. This is not gonna be a base busting raid. Unfortunately. Although the general output on this, even for like midliney stuff because of that Gatling and stuff, not bad. But of course, the meat and potatoes is still gonna be in the output here. Still, we have to think about the other things that this is actually contesting. In terms of other raids, there's raids that have heavy attacks, raids that generally do a lot more damage right out of the gate without you having to either add extra stuff or to constantly put yourself in prolonged melee. Not to mention having to worry about weird clearance stuff like that with the boot. But we did get some matches in here once we got it. I will be honest with you, some of them were a little bit rough going. It took us a hot minute to actually get a win, and even then I wouldn't say it's super agreeable. I don't want to give up on this suit, but it's also not something that I think I'm going to be super keen to try to push. But we will check out that match right around here. The bigger issue right now, and the reason I wanted more boost on, is because in order to do more of its cancels and combos, once it actually commits to stuff, it has to blow through a lot of its boost to do so. So having the active guard be your only other recourse for either getting a dodge out or standing in place and digging in isn't always an option, without just guaranteeing that you just don't have boost for a hot second. We'll do that Stream Raider battle after this match is done. Also, just to stop with the caps.
Here we go.
I'll do it when I'm ready. gonna be a lot of him coming in from behind and no one stopping him. I can't trust these guys to do that for me. Man, no one wants to look at this guy, huh? What the hell am I looking at, though? Wow, and then he just let them alone. Okay. I got wedged again.
Big deal, pilot. We should capture him. Fire incoming.
5 and 4 got split off. 3 and 1 are apparently keen to do nothing. I'm not really sure where one's trying to go.
Good luck. Your ally's been knocked out. An ally has destroyed an enemy mobile suit. This damage shouldn't affect you much. Your enemy mobile suit destroyed. An ally has destroyed an enemy mobile suit.
I don't think they actually have some sort of support, because that Gaza is a Gaza D. It's not a support Gazam or anything.
Has destroyed an enemy mobile suit.
I don't know if the E actually has a level 2 at this point or not. They have a pseudo support with their own ground type. I just did nothing, huh? Oh wow, I slid him.
Looks like we're ahead for now. Your ally's been knocked out. Ally has destroyed an enemy mobile suit. You've taken some serious damage. Your ally's been knocked out.
Wow, really? Even with the priority difference, huh? The big kick. Yeah, the issue right now is that clearance for the kick, even when we're on like a slight bit of debris, means it's gonna completely whiff unless you catch their like the top of their shoulder. So positioning is really finicky for extra downswings. And the tackle, although it does have an enhanced tackle, it doesn't really do a lot. If it had shield tackle on top of everything else, like a powered or whatever, that'd probably be a little bit more enticing. I got some extra damage on that at least. Oh my god. Alright, I got that. Do you want to try to take care of this? Oh, their pilot dropped. Yeah, we can go back.
Fire incoming.
I was gonna say, that actually wasn't enough. A little bit flaily there. Man, most of it's just you having to use the turning speed to at least get some extra incidental stuff. Being in the mix and in the thick of it's always going to be more advantageous. The bigger issue that I have, and I'll probably still use this match if we don't get anything better. But the bigger issue I have with this is that it doesn't usually pose the same issue of the burden of approach that a raid has when they have to do their job against a support. Some of the other scenarios that we've had so far have had that, but in this case we're just spreading our damage and trying to give them something to chew on instead, and generally just trying to avoid stuff like Decay because they just had that big charge shot. But as a pursuit raid, actually trying to do its job, so far it hasn't really felt super great. But we'll see what happens if we can get another round here. I'd say that's probably one of my bigger issues with this, because a lot of the maps that we've been thrown into so far give flying supports too much room to kind of just flutter away, and having to rely on it being a smaller map means that you're probably not going to be dealing with supports at all, unless someone's feeling particularly cheeky, right? So like that's a non-option on Arctic, unless they're trying to do some stuff on the pillars or whatnot. Alright, and that was the Chill Bomb Armor in action. Unfortunately, that one match in particular didn't really have any supports for us to deal with, which is kind of interesting and kind of funny, because I feel like this is a raid that's a little bit more comfortable when it doesn't have to deal with supports, because it doesn't have a lot of speed, and because it's using its boost for other things, you know, canceling maybe the occasional block and whatnot. This is not a very pursuit heavy raid. It has a hard time getting where it needs to be if it's actually chasing a raid around, especially because at 450 we do have transformable suits as well, so they're going to be flying away. That actually threaded between his legs. Oh my god. So the burden of approach is not only always going to be on you, but it's going to be a heavy burden, especially when you have a lot of Gym 3 powers running around. This is actually the eve of them throwing that suit into the DP store, which means that now everyone can get it, and eventually everyone will have it, and it is pretty much the anti-raid at this cost. Its tackle and whatnot, the fact that it has 2 tackles that actually chunk every time you do them, on top of really heavy melee, a beam gun that actually completely circumvents the skill that this has, on top of extra cumulative with this MG, among other things, means that this is going to be something that's just actively hunted by those suits and suits like it, and there's a fair amount of things like that at 450 because it's just a really easy cost to throw a lot of generals at. So unfortunately, I have a really bad feeling that this is a suit that is just several years too late, especially when we're talking about a ballistic version of that coding skill that it has. If it maybe had to deal with a couple years back when it was mostly just ballistic stuff and like lighter beam stuff like this beam rifle and whatnot, then maybe it would have had a slightly easier time and still been okay. But there's other 2 melee suits that do what this does better, right? The pursuit on the boot isn't really as aggressive as other raids and their attacks. It doesn't have a heavy attack, which you very easily could have on the melee for the fist, right? In other games, it has a shoulder tackle or even just a full frontal like rush tackle. You could have had this have a lot more coverage by flinging itself forward at high speeds and just making that a heavy attack, and yet they still didn't do that here. Very unfortunate. There's a lot of little things that they could do to make this neat, you know, again with the jettisoning armor making this maybe a different kind of raid. But as it stands right now, there are other things that do what it does better. And although it is kind of satisfying when you can get stuck in, especially if you can get a little bit more technical with the blocks and whatnot, in general it's just more work than it's worth, which is a very big shame because it was actually really exciting to see that they were willing to give the Chobam armor a shot as a suit. But this, in general, I don't think is really the way to do it. But that'll be all for our discussion on the Alex Chobam armor. If you have been thriving in it, or at least been enjoying your attempts in it, let us know in the comments. I'm sure someone will have this be like one of their bigger suits to run around in recently, as every suit tends to have at least a few stands, right? But I still have my fingers crossed for them doing some unit adjustments in the future. Until then, this is Gustav the 13th. I'll talk to you all next time.